Welcome back. So in this video I want to talk about drawing with the planes of the head in mind, and so this is very helpful when you're trying to get a more solid feeling to your head drawing, so that if you notice some of your features lack structure or they feel a little bit soft in areas, this can definitely help, as well as studying the skull. We're going to start off with the Andrew Loomis method. So I'm just drawing a circle, slicing off the side. I want to start with an angle view. If you're not as familiar with this, I've got other videos that you can reference. I'll link them below to get started on the this part. But it's pretty simple. It's essentially just slicing off a side, creating a little bit of a plus sign or a subdivide, bringing the line across, and this gives you the brow line. And then the bottom of this point over will give you the nose, and the top of this point over will give you the brow hairline. Forgive me. And then you just take these points. You see this one here is wider than it should be. This is more narrow. This can be good if you're trying to get like this sense of forced perspective, but really at this angle these should be even. But you see I'm kind of guessing as I wrap around this, and then I'll add one more segment roughly equal, should be equal to these over here. That'll give us a chin. I like to put a little oval here, and then we drop this down a bit. And there's units of measurement for this. You could divide this into halves and add one more. I typically don't, because jaw lines vary from person to person. And I'm going to start pretty angular right here. Keep in mind, if you open the mouth, this is going to drop back and down and back. The chin will, obviously. We'll do a relatively closed mouth pose. Nothing too extreme here. We'll just bring this up and connect to the side of the head there. We'll place the ear in this lower quadrant like this. And remember, this is the brow line, not the eye line. The eye line is lower. Just remember that the eyes are halfway down from the top of the head to the chin. So you see that this is up pretty high. In fact, it might even be up still a bit high, because I've extended this distance maybe a little too far, which in turn is going to push the chin down lower, make the eyebrows look higher, right? So remember that these units of measurement, it's a sliding scale, basically. If you move one thing, everything else moves a bit further down the line. So you have to constantly clean up and rectify things like that. I believe, anyways. I don't believe in going in with like this very concise idea that everything's perfect. I think that's a recipe for frustration. So essentially now we've got where the eyes would go. Now, if I was drawing traditionally, there's a lot of times I will skip past this and I'll just start drawing. I'll start, put something like this maybe, and I'll just start going like this. I've drawn long enough where I can kind of fake it and figure out where I want to place these things. I got lots of reference points, and I tend to want to move faster, and all this is here where I can do that because I've done it so many times. But that's not to say that you should be doing that. You should definitely try that, but if you're not feeling comfortable with it, then the plane changes of the head can help you. So we already have our center line, right, which is super important. It's right there. And we know the eyes are roughly going to be here. Now, if you go with the Andrew Loomis method, I'll do some of that, but I typically don't stay to that all the way through. Just like I really don't find the Asaro head to be as beneficial for my way of drawing. I think that's better for painters and sculptors, but I could be wrong. Maybe there's some artists out there that like you might be thinking, no, I use that all the time. I think that for me, it's a matter of picking and choosing what works and then discarding some of the rest. And I'll just show you as I go here. So let me copy this so that, if you're trying to work along, don't think that you have to draw as fast as me and things like that. I'll see comments where people are like, oh, I was moving too fast. Pause the video, catch back up. So the first major plane obviously is this side slice here that we started in the very beginning. This one right here is more of a transitional. So in the Loomis method, he draws it very distinctly as angles like that. And I probably should, but I just look at this as a transition point where, if you were going to look at everything that you shade as light, medium, dark, or maybe not dark, but different shades of gray, right? That's what these transition points and these plane changes would mean to you. So I look at it more like that, not so distinct. Like this is kind of that temple area, right? This is very side of the head. It's not like it's completely flat, but it's a lot more flat by comparison. A lot more indirect light is going to reach that point. So now let's grab this point from right here and go down to the chin. I find this to be a very important one as well. Again, it's a little bit more of that transition. It's not like you see a clear line down somebody's face, not usually, sometimes I guess, but it's more that idea that, okay, there is a distinction there. This really is just representative to the zygomatic bone, right? So if you went like this, it's pretty much where your zygomatic bone would be, somewhere around about. So I think of it like that. And I can't remember if he puts this mark right there. I like that in mine. I know he brings this down to this line, if I remember correctly. It looks more like a mask type approach. I'm not as big of a fan of that particular part. Now, don't get me wrong. I am by no means trying to sound like I know more than Andrew Loomis. The man is a genius. I love his teachings. I'm just saying there's certain aspects that I don't find to work its way into my workflow as much. So just hopefully that doesn't come across as egotistical to you, because I don't want to sound that way. About the time you think you know more than your teachers, that's about the time you stop learning, right? So I would never assume that. But again, I just want to be honest that it doesn't all pertain to my work. So one thing he does, he'll put a keystone-like shape right there in the center of the brow. Let me increase the size for you so you can see it a bit better. And so this part I find super helpful. So, and you also want to play around with this shape. Sometimes this shape might look more like this. It's still the keystone shape, but it might be more elongated. You know, you got to remember noses have tremendous amount of variation, right? So you're going to play around with these shapes, and you're going to, I always think of it like you're drawing transformers or robots or something. It becomes very angular, very robotic looking, but because of that, it gives you a really great sense of structure to work with. So again, you will move these around accordingly, but the main thing is that you just start using them and see where, you know, where it can help you. So I'm going to erase back some of this so we can see a bit better. Okay, and then bring this back. Now, even this part right here, and I would say it's probably, I probably should be looking at the Loomis method as I do this, but I would say it probably goes like that and then back to the face. You know, not so basic there. And then the wings of the nostrils would come out like triangles. Remember, they're going to be higher than this point of the nose. Right, that drops down further. Always make sure to get that in there. Size of the nostrils will vary greatly. This line comes back to the eyes, and this comes down. Something like this. And you could get a couple little triangles in here, whatever you want to do. I guess just do as much as you feel comfortable with. So for instance, if this seems too complex for you, then don't do it. Go simplify it into something like this. See that? That's definitely more simple, right? It's like Optimus Prime. Does he have a nose? Anyway, it's like, it definitely reminds me of a Transformer nose. So, you know, just do something like that. Very simplified approach. And you can always work into this more detailed version. And this is really why I wanted to talk about this subject in this way. I started studying the Sorrow head. I'm still studying it. I did a couple versions that I was pretty happy with. I had to draw it multiple times to even get, you know, wrap my head around it, I guess. And so, you know, but I think more than anything, it was just a pursuit of me trying to accomplish a drawing that I wasn't comfortable with. And so I learned from it, and it's definitely cool, and it's definitely something I'm going to keep revisiting. But I just didn't feel like it was like, hey, this really is beneficial to my process. And then as I started to study more and more people that were doing studies of various plane changes from Loomis and Asaro, probably the two biggest widely known. But even when I looked at my Bern Hogarth books and his drawing of the human head, it was very different looking than either of the two I mentioned before, so the Asaro and Loomis. So to me, this almost becomes a bit subjective, or maybe not subjective, but essentially we all have to navigate our own way and find out what elements work well for us, which ones don't. And so that might be a combination of these different artists and picking and choosing certain areas. I feel like that's what I'm doing here. And again, it might be beneficial to you. It might not be. You might need a very structured approach where you follow the steps specifically to one artist. So try both and see what works for you. So with the lips, a lot of triangles. And so as I've mentioned in lots of other videos, I tend to use an M for the top shape, U for the bottom lip. But then these little divides, there's a V right here. There's basically another version of that keystone shape just flipped. And so you'll see with the Loomis head that he just keeps flipping the keystone shape back and forth. So I really do like that part. It's simple. It's easy to remember. It's effective, effective for that reason. So just keep flipping that back and forth. Even puts another one at the bottom of the chin. Like this. And then for this part, you get this little dip down. It jogs back up. Something like that. To the sides of the mouth. And this goes around to the side and connects to the side of the nostrils. Or the wings. Flares of the nose. Like that. And then he does one like this. Again, each time I say he, I'm referring to Loomis. You probably see at this point. This is mostly, I would say at this point, I'm pretty much just doing the Loomis method, right? But I'll show you here in a second where I tend to deviate. So I think I deviated a little bit, but I don't know, not much. I think really just this line up here on the cheek. I would get rid of this now. Something like that. And so these lines up the middle, I kind of find those to be not as helpful for me. I would get rid of these personally. And so I think that it's more important, and this is actually something that's a little bit similar to the sorrel head, but you have the hairline at that top 1/3, right? So I like focusing in on this part of the brow, or front of the forehead. It's pretty straight. It's not flat. It's like this isn't flat over here, but I find it to be pretty straight. And so the sorrel head does one, and I'm probably going to mess this shape up, so don't quote me on this, but he does something like this, but he does point out that kind of flat area a bit more in his design. So I find that's pretty helpful. And I think on the sorrel one, he does a little bit of the brow here, because the brow does do that as well. You get, kind of the flexed muscles here. You get this tapering here. I mean, that's evident as well. So I feel like, I don't know, I feel like even that curvature right there might be beneficial. Again, I want you to take this all with a grain of salt, and that I'm just showing you how I would do it. I'm not saying this is the way to do it. Okay, so hopefully I established that plenty of times through this video, because I don't want to mislead anybody. I'm still finding my way through this stuff, through this journey. Now another aspect I like to pay attention to or implement is really with the cheekbone. So as the cheekbone comes out like this, I like to do this one. So like this. Really what I'm looking for is this right here. Again, I want that depth and dimension that's kind of pushing the look of the zygomatic bone, and especially this peak right here. It may look a bit extreme, but what it helps me to think about is how when people do have very defined cheekbones and structure there, that part protrudes outward, and therefore we're going to get more shadowing to the sides, more light on the top. Generally, you're going to implement that with more spherical shapes, but again, it's just this plane change. These plane changes are just a reminder of these forms. And then also, one last one I tend to see is that if you look at it's the masseter muscle, the jaw muscle, it kind of aligns with this all the way up to this point. So I don't really want to connect this line like that, but I don't mind having this part come up and do this because I always tend to draw this kind of overdeveloped jaw muscle in my heroic characters. So again, that's something that I tend to see there. So, you know, hopefully this doesn't confuse you. I just want to show you that I think there's a lot of ways to interpret this, and I feel like you kind of have to play around with these concepts and then maybe start with, you know, the Loomis head and the Asaro head and all that, and then back it away into something that is more discernible and something you can process effectively. You know, so simplifications, like everything can be simplified down to some basic steps that becomes a lot easier for you to utilize. And you'll know, because if you go to draw this in multiple views and it becomes super complex, then chances are there's a part of it you don't understand. I definitely see that in my own work, and that's where you go from, you know, maybe less of the triangles of the nose to something like this, or, you know, the other way around. Obviously, you'd start here, kind of work into that, and get a sense of comfort going. So here's a cleaned up version for you. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. I would love to know what you think. More on the way very soon. So as always, good luck with your art, and bye for now.